In this video, we'll cover creating the funding plan, the final step in the getting started process. Based on the information that we entered in steps 1 and 2, the funding plan generates a year-by-year analysis of where our reserves stand in relation to known expenses. Problem areas are automatically identified and highlighted in red. For each year of our analysis, HealthyReserve calculates our total fully funded budget, our percent funded, projected beginning reserves, the annual reserve contribution, our assumed return on investments, our annual expenditures, and finally, our year-end reserve balance. The final two columns are input areas for modeling your reserve funding alternatives, which we'll take a look at next. In our Getting Started example, you can see we have some immediate areas of concern highlighted in red based on the objectives that we set back in step 1. As you recall, we set an objective to maintain a minimum balance of $100,000 and also maintain a minimum percent funded balance of 70%. Going back to our funding plan, we can start to take a look at what's driving this shortfall. As you can see, we've got a couple of big expenses out in the 2040 range. So let's take a look at what they are. By going to our expense projections, we can see that we have a couple of major roofing projects that are going to be due. One for $269,000, the other for $400,000+. That's having a major impact on our funding plan. So what do? The original budget was set up on a monthly basis of $55 per unit for the year of 2023. In the example, we created a year-over-year escalation of 3.5% to keep equal with inflation. That's obviously not going to cut it. So, let's do some what-if modeling. What if we move that to 7%? And we take that and bring that down for the entirety of the term. Okay, this is starting to look a little bit better. In terms of the cash balance, there's only one year that's creating a problem spot, out here in 2043. We still have an issue over here on the percent funded, but that issue is tightening up. As you can see, we're in the high 60s, we're not at 70, but we're getting close. But there is a problem here, out here in 2043, that we're going to have to address. There's a number of ways to address this. You could just note it and manage this very closely over the next, say, 5 years to see how these expenses are hitting and, in fact, if that is holding true. Or we could do a little bit more what-if modeling. What if out here, let's say, in 2040, we were to do a $2,000 special assessment on the 24 units? So, well, let's try a $1,000 assessment. Let's say $24,000. $1,000 assessment, special assessment out in 2040. This is getting us closer. As you can see, we've now brought this up to about $86,000, and we brought our percent funding up to about 67. So this is starting to look like one potential model. Again, it really comes down to what your HOA's financial philosophy is, how you want to model this, and how conservative or not you want to be in terms of keeping these objectives as tight as you can. And again, this is only one simple example. You can be a lot more granular with these inputs if you so choose. The other important point to highlight is hopefully you'll get a sense of why you really need to keep this plan updated on a year-to-year basis. Let's go back to our objectives. We set a return on funds rate of 2%. Let's say, come to find out that our reserves are paying in the area of 1.5%. What's the impact of the funding plan? Again, go to the funding plan. Okay, we've got a few more issues here, if that holds. So again, it's really critical that you keep your funding plan up to date and you keep your objectives up to date. Now that our funding plan is completed, let's take a look at the expense summary sheet. The expense summary is your management snapshot of what's going on with your reserve fund. Let's take a look in more detail. Beginning at the top of the sheet, you'll find your reserve fund health score. Your health score is a key indicator as to whether or not your HOA will be able to meet its reserve adequacy requirements. As you scroll down the page, you'll be presented with feedback on important funding data points, such as your total capital expenditures over time. Next is your expense breakdown, which gives you the category breakdown of where your expenses are coming from. It's pretty clear to see the impact that building exterior will have on our reserve expenses in this example. And finally, we have our reserve expenses over time, which tracks our reserve expenses against our reserve account balance for the term of our analysis. That concludes our three-step getting started process. Hopefully these videos provided you with the background you need to get your reserve fund modeled and managed on an ongoing basis. Make sure to visit our Getting Started page for more helpful support information on Healthy Reserves.